All right, continuing our series of what happens to the rest of you when this is out of place. Now we're going to move on and see what happens if I move the head off of the neutral alignment and how it affects the shoulders, the ribs, the pelvis, the knees, and the feet. Brianna's been our lovely model for these videos. She's a fabulous massage therapist in her own right at our studios, and because I told her this in the last video, she's now standing with her feet in true neutral. All right, and that is a little bit narrower than your normal stance, but that is roughly where your feet belong, which is ankles, under knees, under hips, right? Okay, so her left-right alignment right now is pretty good, right? Nothing really jumps out other than the fact that she seems to be pinning her arms to the sides of her body. But what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take the head through different things. And one is gonna be a left-right shift, one is gonna be a rotation, and one is gonna be a tilt. Four things. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, sorry. Four things. So we're going to do a shift left-right, we're going to do a tilt left-right, we're going to do a rotation, and we're going to do forward-backwards movement to the head. Five things. Sorry. We're also going to do shift of the skull on top of the spine. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. All right. So starting out, what we're going to do is just shift the neck from here as opposed to tilt the head from up there. All right, so if I take your head, and I want you to try to keep your feet, let your feet do whatever they need to do, but keep your eyes on the horizon. Great, okay, so here's a side shift of the head. It's pretty subtle, but you notice that in order to hold this up, she had to move something that way to counterbalance it. And people will choose varying things. They might choose the hips, they might lift a shoulder. She externally rotated a foot, partly because I asked her to, but that is a very normal reaction to having your head shifted over. It's totally possible that she could have also shifted the other foot instead, and you'll see both variations, right? So here, now we've got a bunch of weight falling through this foot and this knee, so this knee might start to speak up, have some issues. This foot or ankle might run into plantar fasciitis. This hip might be hiking a little bit, and the QL might be either pushing the discs off and causing sciatica through that leg, or potentially the piriformis now is super tight and causing it through this leg. There may be some low back pain with this, but ultimately the most likely case of any kind of pain might be in here, because this is now really overstretched, and the levator scapula here often will speak up when the head's shifted away from it and will feel super tight, but it's actually complaining because it's too long and overstretched. So that's basically a whole shift from the base of the neck. The other option is a tilt at the suboccipital joint, right? And here, this one's a little tougher for people, but you can see how this shoulder hiked up here, this hip hiked up, this knee had to bend, this knee locked. Everything shifted pretty dramatically in this instance, just to hold up the extra weight of her head and make her balance so she didn't fall this way. And you can see for her, that works pretty well in the opposite direction as well, in terms of the same things happening. Hyperextended knee here, open knee there. This you won't see on camera, but this foot now is slightly falling into the floor and that arch is collapsing, whereas this foot is slightly rolling externally. Okay. So the next one we're going to do is a rotation. And that could happen from the base of the neck, or it could happen from the top, but it's really hard to separate those things in your own body, and it's very likely to be the entire cervicals doing it. So try to keep your eyes even on the camera, even as I'm turning your head. Great. Okay. This is very exaggerated. It would be pretty unusual for a person to comfortably stand this far in rotation and just bring their eyes sideways to look at you, but Subtler versions of this definitely exist, and you'll see some of the same things that we saw. Hyperextended knee, open knee, slightly collapsed arch here, slight hip hike here. You're gonna see QL on one side super tight, psoas iliacus on the other side super tight. You're also in the upper back gonna see these rhomboids really working hard, this set of pecs really working hard. So let's look at a couple of those from side view and then also introduce a couple of different movements as well. So first, shifting the head and neck, you start to see from the side view, especially on her, this wouldn't always be the case for clients. There's lots of different ways to compensate for that movement, but this one will show up from time to time. We have one knee locked, one knee open. So if you're looking at me over here with your eyes out of the sockets, we get a very similar set of compensations, but slightly more exaggerated. We've switched which knee is doing which. We've got a lot of activity here and a lot of activity here. And what you're often gonna get with a rotation is tight on one side in the front, tight on the other side in the back. And last but not least, we're now gonna go into the classic modern desk posture. So her rib cage now is going backwards a little bit, but her head's coming forward. Now, if her suboccipitals were relaxed, she would be looking at the floor, right? But in order to keep her eyes on the horizon, with her head forward and the tightness in the anterior neck, now the suboccipitals have to work really hard. You're also potentially gonna have overstretch issues in the mid-back. The traps are really overstretched. Rhomboids are overstretched. Pecs are super tight. Low back is a little bit long and extended. You might have some issues down there. Psoas iliacus looks like it's holding on for dear life. But especially with this head forward, sort of crunch down neck, tight suboccipitals, you do want to ask a client about headaches, jaw tension, TMJ, things like that. That would be very common with this kind of posture. So there you have a bunch of ways to look at how misalignment of the head in space will affect all the other joints in the body, including the rib cage, shoulders, pelvis, knees, and feet. If you like this material, we have a whole series of videos like this, and you can check out some more here.